Okay, here we go. We're ready to get started. Our next panel is called Achieving Digital Transformation with Intelligent Assistants. And I'm going to ask the panelists, starting with Priyanka, to just briefly introduce themselves and tell us about their organization and what you're doing with digital transformation with Intelligent Assistants. Kind of keep it brief.
Hi everyone, this is Priyanka. I head the Emerging Technologies Unit within SAP, and I'm responsible for evaluating various technologies that are out there, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, NLP, voice recognition, and so on. And we're looking at how can we converge all these technologies and embed them into existing business processes and make mainstream business applications out of it. And at the moment, we are interested in releasing a platform called ANA, which would be an open framework into which you can integrate any NLP, any voice recognition, as well as tie it to the various back-end business processes.
Cool. This is Anand Sekhar. I'm a director within KPMG's cognitive and robotics practice. So in my role, I focus on, so we call it a digital labor transformation, focusing anything from robotics to cognitive. So think of intelligent automation somewhere in between. How do I take natural conversations and converse, as well as the back office transformation, which is the low-hanging fruit. I do have another role within our innovation group. We are, as KPMG, we are looking to disrupt ourselves in the kind of services we offer our clients. If you think of KPMG, you think of audit and tax, but we do have a big advisory business as well. And how do we see tax and audit? How do we take the next generation of tax and auditors are going to be much smaller? And how do we disrupt ourselves? So some of these solutions, looking at cognitive and looking at regulations, regulatory work, which is our biggest business. How do we look at using some of these technologies to bring some of innovative ideas and take it to our market?
Great. My name is Sumeet. I work for Booz Hamilton. For all the people in the West Coast, it's one of the largest providers of consulting services to the federal government. All right, and basically I work in the strategic innovation group. I lead the practice around next generation digital experiences. So think about data science and artificial intelligence applied to digital experiences. So think about natural language understanding, NLP, NLI, content analytics, recommendation, personalization engines, virtual assistants, all for the fact that how can we push the needle and how next generation interfaces would look like.
Okay, so this topic is actually kind of near and dear to my heart because I was an IT manager within the federal government for 14 years, and I saw a lot of different applications that really could have, we could have used a lot more digital transformation and a lot more in terms of intelligent assistance. I mean, I started out doing enterprise applications, and then my last job was as the manager of the end user services contract, where we actually gave all the NASA employees and contractors their laptop and their cell phone and their email, and then we had a interface with our customer care and our help desk, and there was very little digital transformation going on there. So it's an area that's, I think, kind of ripe for innovation. So I guess to Sumeet, my first question is, how do you think intelligent assistants can help companies achieve digital transformation? And I guess also describe how you define digital transformation.
All right, great. Maybe I'll give you a more of the East Coast perspective coming from DC. You heard a lot of consumer stories and bank stories. Let's talk about the federal government, right? So talking in the context of the federal government, digital transformation is coming, obviously very slowly. How many of you around here heard of US Digital Services? Any of you, maybe, right? Heard of an organization called 18F? All right, 2 hands, right? So 18F is kind of a startup within the White House, which is all comprised of a lot of people from Silicon Valley going there and volunteering an year or two to become presidential technology fellows. They get embedded within different agencies, and they're supposed to be the ones bringing this change agent. Now, obviously, change is slow in the government, but they've been able to do things much faster than even was imagined a few years back, right? They have procurements now where people come in and they give you a day to write code, and they look at what's been done in that, and they don't have a blind marriage anymore, right? Somebody writes a proposal and they award it to somebody. They want you to see it in action. So things are coming, transformation is happening. But remember, the government's motives and consequences of doing things are very different, right? Motives are somewhat similar. They want to save time. They got limited budgets. They do care about the citizens, I think so, right? And they do want, basically, they have policies and directives. But the consequences of maintaining a status quo is very different, right? For a bank or any for-profit organization, people vote with their dollars. They can walk away. But, let's give you an example that was published recently. The IRS, right? We all know it, have to interact with it, can't forget about it, right? So last year, during the tax season, 60% of calls were dropped. But they didn't even pick it up, right? Of the ones that picked up, they had a long waiting call. But what are you going to do? Can you say, I can't file my taxes because you didn't pick up my call? Right? Doesn't work that way, right? But there is a consequence of what's happening, right? So I think the IRS director said that they collect $3 trillion every year from voluntary tax contributions, right? A one person moving the needle there would have been a $30 billion change in what they collected, right? So going back to your thing, because they're so behind, I feel these technologies can act as a leapfrog and help them move forward way faster than others could have, right? They're not going to get their act together. They cannot train enough people together. But if these technologies can complement and act as a kind of force multiplier to help these things happen, at least the tax law questions, at least the simple questions can be deflected. Booz Allen did one app, which was the most asked question. Where is my tax refund? Right? That was the question they used to get all the time. So we made that an app. Now, would that be great if we could take some of these questions and direct them again? But change happens. But I think there's a reason. I think we can make changes. It just takes building the use case and finding the kindred spirit who like to make the change.
Okay, so and let me ask this to anybody that wants to answer. In terms of digital transformation, where do you think the biggest opportunities are? You mentioned a customer-facing use case. Do you see the biggest opportunities in customer-facing use cases or internal to the enterprise, or do you think it's both?
Yeah. So from my experience, I serve most of the commercial clients, unlike the federal government here, right? So where I'm seeing it is from my clients, I'm looking at both customer-facing and internal-facing. So let me explain what I mean by customer-facing. I serve quite a few telcos across the world. So if you think about a telco business, you have a wireline business, which is diminishing. There is a wireless business where the subscribers are pretty static. There's churn happening, but the net is the growth is not there. And then you have this enterprise business where they're trying to grow, right? So how do I serve these various segments of business I have? And my clients are changing, especially in the wireless business, the millennials coming in, what kind of access do they need to have? They're looking at various ways of communicating back their frustration as well as feedback. So how do I engage the customer? On the enterprise side, gone are the days where even on the enterprise side, the kind of support you kind of need is not the traditional voice call. They're moving towards more app-based. Can I have instant support? Don't ask me the 35 questions. You know me. How do I get better? That's the consumer side. If you look at the internal side, I'm getting a lot of questions on HR, right? So I serve one of the largest bottling company. You can think who they are. They have lots of hourly employees who serve vending machines, and they call up and say, what's my hourly payroll going to be for the end of the week, right? And they keep calling for this week, previous week, 18-minute call duration. How can I deflect those calls, right? So some of these chatbots and back office automation, combination of it. I'm not saying everything is an answer. I'm not saying the virtual chat or a chatbot is the answer, but there is a combination of solutions which need to be there. And plus, I think we were talking about data. So how do I get these data enriched over time? That's going to be a biggest factor in integrating as well.
So if you may jump on it, I think a lot of the vendors here talk about chatbot. I think the transformation cannot be all or nothing. I think it'll have to be step by step. So I'll give you an example. For citizen services, again, most times we look asking questions from the government. We're looking for information, right? So there was benefits.gov, which was one-stop shop for people to come and find things, right? And we said, hey, we can take you all the way to a chatbot. They weren't ready, right? But we took the same concept and said, okay, what if we made your search better, right? The same thing. People come and look for housing voucher, but it's called in section 8K, right? It's not called housing voucher. People can't find things, right? Can we make finding things easier? Can we add an API which tracks how people navigate the site? So we know people look for housing voucher, also look for social security entitlement, look for other things. Keep track of this. So now that's available. Now people are comfortable. They're finding benefits from there. What if we change the interface from a search box to a chatbot now? right? Similar thing, but there's intelligence to power the chatbot, so the chatbot will give you better results. And it's been kind of running for some time, so the results will be, better by the collective intelligence of people who've been using it.
Right. Okay, so Priyanka, the panel is comprised of systems integrators and you're more software vendor. So what role do you think systems integrators and or software vendors can play in helping enterprises achieve digital transformation with intelligent assistants?
So if you look at all our customers, they're all on a path to digital transformation. Everybody wants to drive innovation, but the key is they don't know what to cause any disruption in their existing business processes that support their current business. So how do we achieve innovation without any disruption? And I think these intelligent assistants or so-called digital assistants, they're a great vehicle to drive innovation, transformation of the existing business processes. And I agree with what some of the other panelists have said. We have to look at it at the entire business transformation stepwise. So it cannot be a big bang approach. It has to be gradual innovation, and that's what all our customers are looking at. Right?
Yeah, and so we were talking a little bit before the panel, and I mean, my background is in SAP. I joined NASA because they were implementing the SAP financial system, and I ended up, doing a lot of different SAP implementations there, including, purchasing and all that. So it was interesting to me how SAP is thinking about integrating intelligent assistance into the actual business processes that you implement within the software. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Let's take an example of a use case. Let's say I want to know what is my vacation balance. Today, if you would ask Siri, what's your vacation balance, it's going to go do a search on the web. So the web will result more than 6 million results. And these results are already indexed, ranked, and they're returned back to you based on best match or a recent date it was posted and so on. But you're not looking for a best match. You want to know the exact answer. And this answer is stored in somewhere in your business backend system, whether it's your HCM system or whether it's your ERP system or what have you. And how you access that data, how is that data stored, structured, modeled, exposed, calculated, aggregated, returned, there's a lot of complexity involved. And as SAP, we are trying to abstract that complexity and make the whole business process simple. So instead of you having to become a power user to get that information out of your business system, now you can ask these questions using natural language. And using our APIs, then you can go and fetch this data from the various backend. So we are trying to drive simplicity, drive automation, drive intelligence, embed intelligence into our existing business processes.
Okay, so my next question for Anand was, how difficult is it to integrate these assistants into the back-end systems? Because without integration of the back-end systems, they're not going to have any of the knowledge. And it sounds like they're, if the software vendor is kind of providing an assistant already with that's already integrated into their back-end, maybe it's not as hard as I'm thinking it is. Or what's your experience with your implementations?
I'm glad SAP is doing it. I'm not sure the other vendors are in the same bucket, right? So bottom line, I think when I think about integration, right, the integration problem as such has been solved a long time ago. I don't think it's a technology problem. The problem is, where is my data? How is my data model, as what Priyanka said, right? So is it in a way in which I can easily extract the information and expose it to somebody who needs it? Is the calculations right? Like, take the example of vacation, right? At least in my organization, the accrual is 2 weeks delayed, so I don't know my exact until the next cycle. So how do I communicate back to the user who's going to communicate saying, what is my vacation balance? So the other part of the integration challenge is content, right? I think we've had many discussions. I'm glad we had the discussion in the earlier panels. The data exists. Yes, you have lots of data, you can make better decisions, but at the same time, you need to kind of make sure that it's ranked well, you need to cleanse it, aggregate it, analyze it, make sure you're training it accurately, otherwise you're going to have a Microsoft problem. We don't want that, right? So, and not to blame them, but it's all a learning, right? We all are learning from that experience. How do you make unsupervised learning that's not really worth it? So that's what I think the integration challenge is going to be is, how do I make content available, make best sense out of it? How do I train the system over time? And I think Lawrence earlier talked about the 4 A's. We have a very similar philosophy on aggregating, analyzing, and acting upon it. I think we got to leverage it.
So if I may add a quick one to it, I think one of the things we try to go out of the way is while interfacing, make sure we design for change in the sense that that today's API is not going to be tomorrow's API. Vendors are changing, things are changing. So you want to make sure that, say the JSON object, that API.ai doesn't percolate all over your thing. So tomorrow if that changed, everything's broken, that integration.
Right.
Thinking through the fact that, because this is such a fast growing thing, SAP is going to be around, but there's so many other vendors which might or might not be around to offer that service. Designing with the vendor neutrality in mind is important while integrating.
Yes, and our customers, they're dealing with complex heterogeneous system landscapes.
Right.
So it's not just SAP. They have SAP and they have a bunch of other systems. So I think system integrators, they'll definitely play a very large and important role.
Yeah, one thing if I might, sorry, I'm just piling on. I hate to do this. But if you think about rules, right, one is, how do I make the system learn the rules over time, right? So you need to have, it can't be a blank slate day one, because many of my clients are saying, don't give me a blank slate, give me a 40% solution, build it up. And then, why don't you learn the rules over time rather than configuring it, the pre-configured rules, because these solutions are meant to be learning on their own. Yes, you need some supervision, put some governance around it so that you know what's happening. But how do I bring in those automated rule generation as well?
Right. So that kind of brings us to the next question, Sumeet. I think it seems like the big stumbling block is always, how can I give the intelligent assistant the information it needs about how we actually do business here? I mean, if I think about, again, my experience with NASA, the whole procure-to-pay cycle, very complicated. Even creating a purchase requisition, creating a purchase order, some of that happens within SAP, some of it happens within other systems. And for a while, we tried to spend money creating, process flow charts and all that, so we know all the different business rules. I mean, it's insane if you think about what goes into just creating that one procure-to-pay cycle. And a lot of the companies don't have that information documented. So, is there a way out? I mean, what's your experience as an integrator coming into a place to provide intelligent assistance that just doesn't have that knowledge base built up, or process knowledge base?
So I think I see this as an opportunity. I think we're already seeing a lot of demand for use cases, kind of a digital employee shadowing the current employees. So even if you don't have it all written down, but you have how people work, if we can capture that by the use of the chat, I'll give you an example that will help. So we got a use case for chat ops, right? Cybersecurity Operations Center, right? Tier 1, all the person really does, he has a playbook, he follows through, have an incident, shut down that IP address, block that port, report that, and pass it on to Tier 2 so they can resolve that, right? But that's an automated playbook that they follow, right? Or they do these things. Can this be automated? Can a chat op be involved part of it so people, as they're doing it, they could bring it in and say, hey, what do I do? And as it's part heuristic in the sense it's learned from what, part it's what you seeded it with rules they talk about. And the combinations, what happens is these guys rotate out pretty fast because they're not paid that well, right? So the next guy comes in, can he learn from what was done? Because now the answer is not just by the buddy sitting next to him, but it's what the best practices were captured by the chatbot, right?
Okay.
One of the three-letter, I was just mentioning to Anand, where you had a three-letter agency, which is forward-leaning, and they want to build an analyst virtual assistant. They just put an RFI for that, and they said, hey, what if analysts could learn from what analysts have been doing? Because it's so fast-moving, even if I build the rules, the new targets and the new threats would have changed by the time things are coming in. So it's almost like there's a chat ops or the analyst assistant could be working with you and learning how things are happening. So it brings in the most latest thing coming in.
Right. So we only have a few minutes left. I just want to see if there's anybody there in the audience that has a question. There's several questions, actually. Okay.
I just had a quick question. When you experience, do you see in how you're looking at the market, do you see any kind of verticals that are popping out where you see that this is going to be, this really fits here, or from your experience where you think it's all over the map, or what's been your experience in kind of looking at the landscape of where this might fit, where you see a better fit for this than any other industries, or is it just still kind of open field?
Happy to take it first. So in my experience, I'm seeing the telcos being early adopters because if you think about their line of business, they have a huge call center business. How do I take that disruption, right? So the other area I'm seeing is financial services. So if you think about the banks and the insurance, they have built up capacity so much, and now they're trying to see, how do I use voice biometrics, right? The risk element has gone up significantly. How do I minimize my risk and I leverage some of these things? So they're looking at compliance controls, So that's where I think our line of business, how we operate, we are seeing lots of opportunities in that. So to me, financial services, telco, I'm seeing slowly the CPG clients are slowly warming up to some of these, but they've been wanting to see some real use cases. So the laggers and the innovators, that's where the difference is.
Sure.
So I'm curious about your thoughts, particularly on the consulting side, around digital transformation for more like people's lives. And I'm thinking more of the IRS example, but in countries like India, where everything, we don't know the definition of bureaucracy in America, right? And so but everybody has a phone now. So digital transformation to basically change people's lives, so we don't have to go through the graph and the that kind of stuff, and get direct access to the information, obviously the IRR, the railroad, but really more the government services. And do you think that these types of technologies will help companies or countries like that skip some generational issues that maybe we have?
I think you hit it on the reason China and then India, obviously you can guess from there. It's the reason that's happening because their first interface to the internet is their phone. For a large population, they don't own computers. My mom has a computer, she doesn't want to use it, she just uses WhatsApp, right? So that's the interface to the world. So it's very native for them to be able to use such an information thing. So they basically, I think, I just read a story. There was somebody who built a bot in India to kind of tell farmers what the price was of their crop in the market nearest to it. Then, so they know they're not being underpriced by the guy who's acquiring them. So they know what's it costs there, so they can better negotiate the deal with the person doing that, right? Simple things like what's the price, what's a thing like that. So I think there's a great potential for these things to live in that interface and disrupted by knowledge in that interface. And it doesn't have to be very complex, it can be simple, but I think it'll be powerful in that. Here, because we're used to a much richer interface, we got more computing power, I think we're going to balance it out.
I think on that optimistic note, we will adjourn.
One more question?
We're right back on time.
Very good. Thank you,
Thanks,
panel.
panel.
All right, thank you.